All right, here we are, back in studio. 10 days on the road with you. That's a lot. That's a lot of time to be traveling with you.
Oh, man, I loved it. I slept all day. I slept all night. I didn't know which was which because my, what do you call it, circadian rhythm? The circadian rhythm was off. So I don't know where I was at. My time frame was gone. So I was just sleeping 4 hours in the daytime, 10 hours at night, golfing with Darren Barker. It was like a mini vacation for me, except no alcohol.
You are, well, no alcohol, though you made every effort to get the most out of the non-alcoholic beers they were serving in Saudi Arabia. Like, how many of those did you put down trying to get a buzz off the Bud Zeros?
I swear to you, it wasn't Bud Zero, it was a Budweiser, and I hate Budweiser, but since it was the only non-alcoholic one there, I bought all of them at the golf course. I think I bought like 16 of them. The Saudis there looked at me like, there's no alcohol in here. I go, it's the closest I'm going to get while I'm in Riyadh. Give them hither.
All right, we're back in Los Angeles. A lot to get to on this episode of the show. We're going to talk about the Tank Davis versus Lamont Roach fight, which is a done deal. David Benavidez against David Morell, also a done deal. Press conference in L.A. was happening this week. And I also want to nominee my first candidate for the new segment we're going to have called the Sergio Mora Mount Rushmore of Bad Business Decision. We're going to get into that. Plus,
we're going to need more than 4 heads if that's the case.
It is, but this is a good one. We're going to take your questions too via the mailbag as well. But Sergio, I want to start with a little bit of talk about Canelo, because we're now a couple months removed from Canelo's win over Edgar Berlanga, and we're about to enter into that kind of phase of the calendar where Canelo decides on his next opponent. It's usually December, January, where he and Eddie Reynoso start to really think about who Canelo is going to fight next. And look, the obvious front runner is Terrence Crawford, who is the world title holder now at 154. A lot of talk over the last, few weeks and months about Crawford against Canelo. There's some tension, of course, between Canelo and Turki Al-Sheikh, but there's probably no more marketable fight out there than Canelo against Crawford. It's certainly possible Canelo goes to the UK, fights a Chris Eubank Jr., goes to Japan, fights one of his 3 mandatory challengers. But Bud, for me, is at the top of the list. But I want to throw something out there. What about Canelo against Gilberto Ramirez? We just saw Gilberto Ramirez this past weekend become the unified champion at cruiserweight. He looks phenomenal at this new weight class. He is a former 168-pound title. It doesn't look like it anymore because he's massive. So he's fought at lower weight classes. And if you look at, the potential marketable domestic fights for Canelo, there aren't too many that could be better than Gilberto Ramirez. So I'll ask you this. Should Gilberto Ramirez be considered by Canelo for his next fight?
I think he should, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think Zurdo filled out nicely at cruiserweight. I remember back in the day, before Zurdo won a world championship at 168, there was sparring footage of Canelo and Zurdo, and Ramirez did really well against Canelo. And there was these rumblings of, yeah, this guy's going to beat Canelo. This guy's the guy to beat Canelo because he was tall, he was a southpaw, volume puncher, excellent body attack. Everything that he is now, only he filled out 200 pounds nicely. Actually, he fills out 220 plus pounds nicely. He's a big Mexican. Mexicans don't grow that big, all right? Normally, 160 is the max. This guy's hitting 200 plus, and he just became the world champion of the world. So Zurdo became the first Mexican super middleweight champion, and now he became the first cruiserweight champion. So he's making history. That's one. So I don't think it's going to be a good physical matchup. 2, Canelo said he doesn't want to fight Mexicans anymore. So what happened there?
Well, I mean, all of a sudden hasn't that ship sailed? Like, I fought Jaime Munguia. So,
okay. Yeah.
Come on. That ship is long sailed. Plus, I never really believed that. Let me make the case for this. Canelo has flirted with the idea of moving up to cruiserweight in the past. Remember a few years ago when he had that stare down with Junior Makabu, who at the time was a cruiserweight champion. Now, this was before he took that, I don't call it a beating, but it's a pretty clean loss to Dimitri Bivol. And then we all kind of said after that, like, well, maybe he's not really ready to move all the way up in weight. But he flirted with the idea in the past. I mentioned the marketability. If you're talking about a U.S.-based fight, I can't think of a more marketable opponent than Gilberto Ramirez. Like a Crawford fight would be massive, but I don't think there's enough money in a U.S. market for the Crawford fight unless the Saudis come in and put it up like they did back in August for their show here. So if you're going to make a fight or an event outside of the Saudi sphere, you're talking about a very small list of potential opponents. And it's not going to be like Christian Mbili. He's already fought Munguia and Edgar Berlanga. Zurdo is the next big name kind of on that list in and around, those weight classes. It would be a legacy fight for him. He's already a 4-division world champion. The chance to become a 5-division world champion, I would bet, is pretty appealing. There's also, Sergio, Zurdo is a full-fledged 200-pounder right now. But if he was going to fight Canelo, I'm sure Canelo would say, 190. That's what we're going to do the fight at. So we could weight drain Ramirez. And I think Ramirez would do it. Like, for that kind of opportunity, I think Ramirez would suck himself back down to like 190-ish pounds for that particular fight. And the cherry on top is that you'd once again get Oscar De La Hoya back into one of these promotions, right? Like, it was so goofy seeing Oscar and Canelo kind of go at it during the promotion for Munguia, but it did help the promotion. Like that Munguia number, I don't know what the final number was, but it was successful. Everybody involved in that event was really happy with the results of it. I love the idea of Canelo against Zurdo for a cruiserweight title or 2 cruiserweight titles.
Hey, listen, if you can actually dehydrate Zurdo down to a certain low 190s, then yes, I could see the possibility of it. And if he's willing to face another Mexican, yes. And here's the thing: whenever a Mexican fights another Mexican, everyone knows the demographics in boxing. Whenever a Mexican fights an American, whether he's a Black American or Mexican American, whatever it is, it doesn't hit as well if it's when it's Mexican, and the pay-per-view numbers don't lie. It's always like the better selling. It's always best when a Mexican fights on Cinco de Mayo weekend or Mexican Independence weekend.
Think about that. On Mexican Independence Day week or Cinco de Mayo weekend, which is May.
What did I just say?
I'm just saying, like, how that would just make that event.
Let me finish my sentence. That's exactly what I'm getting to. Okay. 2 Mexicans on a Mexican holiday, put it anywhere in the world, but preferably you can do it in Vegas. That's where it sells the most. And that's where you get the most site fees. So, yes, I could see it making all the sense in the world. But stylistically, and at the fact that you mentioned, he would become the first Mexican to win titles in 5 divisions. There's been what, 3 or 4 Mexicans.
Has there really been no Mexicans with 5
divisions?
No. Okay, well then that
he would be the first. So that is a carrot dangling there, because there's been several that did 4 divisions. Eric Morales, Travieso Arce, Canelo, and I believe there's one more, but not 5 divisions.
How did Marquez have? No, Marquez didn't get a belt.
Morales. So it's Morales, Arce. I'm losing track here.
But nobody with 5.
Nobody with 5. Okay. That would be like, Thomas
That's
Hearns.
Huge.
That would be Thomas Hearns. That's elite. That's elite right there. And in the bigger weight classes, because in the smaller weight classes, only 3 pounds separates 112 to 115, 115, 118, whatever, so on. In the bigger weight classes, it's 6 to 7 pounds. It's a lot harder to become a multi-division champion whenever 6 pounds and 7 pounds and 8 pounds separate a middleweight from a super middleweight and so on. So it's a lot to chew. A lot of people don't realize that. So if anyone could chew it, it's this Mexican. And I think it makes all the sense in the world as far as popularity, people watching, tuning in, the history of it, stylistically. But I think once they're in the ring, it's not going to be like Canelo facing another 6'3" guy in Callum Smith, which he just annihilated, one-sided fight. Now, this will be way bigger. Callum Smith and him and Zurdo are the same height, but when it comes to mass and how much they rehydrate and how better Zurdo is than Callum as a bigger fighter and how confident he is now as a cruiserweight, beating these cruiserweight champions like he has been doing. Yeah, I just think it's way too much for Canelo to chew off. But who's going to tell him any different?
Wait, so you would make Ramirez a favorite in that fight?
I would have to.
Really?
I would have to make him a favorite. It's just way too much size advantage, and the fact that he just beat 2 cruiserweight champions at cruiserweight, where Canelo hasn't fought. He hasn't even fought north of 175. That's a big jump from 175. That's actually the biggest jump in boxing. Before, it's just 7 to 8 pounds, right? And then from light heavyweight to cruiserweight, that's 15 pounds plus. That's a huge jump, especially when you're only 5'8". Canelo is 5'8", and he could probably only weigh 180, 182 soaking wet if he's in shape. Yeah, it's just way too much to bite off and chew. But if anyone could do it, it's Canelo. He would want that challenge. He would want to make that history. And if Zurdo's on board and the Mexican people are on board, and to create history for everyone and line their pockets, I think Canelo is great enough. See, I would say ignorant enough, but he's not ignorant. He's a businessman. I would say he's ballsy enough and chasing legacy enough to where he would want to do that.
I would agree with you on the size being a huge factor. And the last time we saw Canelo in with a bigger guy that threw a lot of punches, it didn't go well. Bivol.
But Bivol has footwork.
Zurdo's got some decent footwork now too. The Malik Scott edition is
it's gotten a lot better.
Enhanced
Absolutely.
that. So I get the size discrepancy being a big factor. But as great as Zurdo has looked at cruiserweight, beating Goulamirian, beating Billum Smith, I'd certainly argue Canelo's skills far outweigh those of the guys I just mentioned. Like Chris Billum Smith is a good fighter, but his skill set is not on Canelo's. Like Canelo would go into that fight against Zurdo not looking to knock him out, but look, let me see if I can soften that body up a little bit, which hasn't looked as, ripped as some of the other guys.
First of all, what makes you think he's going to get to the body as easily if Zurdo's jabbing with that long reach and moving away and using his footwork and boxing on the back foot? It won't be as easy.
There are a few fighters in boxing today that are as good at putting pressure on you, though. Like, that's a skill, too. Like, cutting the ring off, putting pressure. Like, I don't think Canelo will be as easily confused by some of the spin-outs that Zurdo did against Billum Smith. I think he'll have a counter to that. Like, Billum Smith couldn't deal with the footwork of Zurdo. I think Canelo would have a response to it.
That's why Canelo is still one of the pound-for-pound greats, because he'll have an answer for a lot of movers. He's faced enough movers to where he knows what to do now. Like, it's not going to be baffling to him when he fought Mayweather when he was a young kid, or when he fought even Austin Trout or other movers. No, this is different. Ramirez, he'll stay long enough. He'll stay in front of you long enough to where he becomes flat-footed. Then he needs to remind himself, "Oh, I'm a mover now because I'm a cruiserweight," and he'll go back on the back foot. But what he doing in his last fight against Billum Smith? He engaged with him.
Yeah,
he engaged with him instead of boxing like Malik Scott wanted him, like Chua wanted him to. He was doing great when he was on the back foot boxing. But once he starts hitting an opponent, it gets good to him, and the Mexican style comes out of him. And I think that's what Canelo would rely on, the fact that he won't have to chase him around like he did Bivol or like he did
he didn't
other
chase
fighters.
Bivol around, though. Bivol was right there.
Well, okay, well,
BJ
Saunders, another southpaw, and other
Jermell
fighters,
Charlo, guys like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't have to chase him around, because there'll come a time where Ramirez will swallow his pride and be like, "Hey, what am I doing here? I'm Mexican too." Mexican style versus Mexican style.
Why does you're Mexican? Why does your Mexican accent just sound like you're on a Saturday morning cartoon?
Well, I mean, I don't know how to imitate a non-Mexican.
Sound like Cheech. Look, I still think the best fight to be made for Canelo is the Crawford fight. I hope they get that done for, May, June of 2025. But if not that, I don't need to see Canelo against Chris Eubank Jr. I know how that fight ends. I don't need to see Canelo against some mandatory or top contender at 168.
Canelo Beterbiev.
No, because Beterbiev, that's a bad fight.
Beterbiev was almost 40 years old.
It doesn't matter.
Injuries.
Somehow he's found
injuries.
What he did against Bivol. I don't want to see that against Canelo, because Canelo doesn't move like that. Canelo would stand with Beterbiev, and I think that ends badly for Canelo. I think Beterbiev is a much tougher fight for Canelo than Zurdo Ramirez is.
He'll be the toughest fight for anyone there. But can you imagine if he does that? I mean, he'll be not only a pound for pound fighter, pound for pound puncher at his absolute best and peak, as far as the record goes, and how destructive he still appears to be. But he is 39, about to be 40 years old.
Yeah, so Canelo's also 34 years old. I don't want to see that. That to me, that's the end of Canelo's career. I think that Zurdo would be a calculated risk. There certainly is a risk of losing. There certainly is a risk of getting beat up. But if you get him down to 190, drain him a little bit, it levels the playing field to a degree. I think that should be high on Canelo's list. All right, I want to talk about this recent announcement, or the reporting of it, that Tank Davis against Lamont Roach is on. Tank Davis defending his 135-pound title against Roach, who is a 130-pound title holder. That will happen on March 1st at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. This fight was discussed, Sergio, for December of this year, just a few weeks from now. That date fell out. Now it's been rescheduled for March. So are you okay with Tank Davis fighting Lamont Roach?
Of course not. No, I don't think no one's okay with it. Lamont Roach is an excellent fighter, but he's already been beaten on the championship level. I mean, once you have that blemish against a fighter, I think it was Jamel Herring who beat him.
Jamel
Herring,
beat him, yeah.
Yeah. So
for that title, he fought for Jamel's title at 135.
And Jamel Herring, as talented as he is, he was an older fighter. He just retired now. Older fighter, clever, sly, like an Austin Trout type fighter. But he wasn't a great. He wasn't a pound for pound guy. He wasn't elite. He wasn't one of these guys that you would put at the top of the list in their weight division. He was a guy that he was a solid champion, and he beat Lamont Roach. If Herring at that point of his career could beat a Lamont Roach, what makes you think Tank or anyone else in the lightweight championship division will do? Nobody wants to watch Tank fight these guys in-house anymore. Nobody. We're getting tired of it. Now, mind you, I was an advocate initially. I mean, if you remember back in the day, a year, 2, 3 years ago, when we would talk about Tank, I used to praise Mayweather Promotion, saying, man, they're laughing all the way to the bank. They're keeping it in-house. They're fighting guys that they can beat. They're making a killing in pay-per-view. That ain't me anymore. My mentality has evolved, Chris Mannix. I'm tired of this shit. I think me and everyone else in boxing is tired of Tank fighting these guys. Yes, they're good opponents. Yes, they're keeping it in his house. Yes, he's still a star, a pound-for-pound pay-per-view attraction. He's a killer, and I'm still watching. I don't care who he's fighting. I'm still going to watch. I'm still going to pay, sadly. But I'm tired of it, man. Come on. Stop fighting these fucking guys and start fighting the guys that are in front of you that are the biggest names in your weight division. You're in your 30s, man. What are you doing? What are you doing if you're Tank Davis? You're making a killing in money, but your legacy's going out the window. I mean, can you say right now, you vote for the Hall of Fame? Mannix?
Oh, no.
Will you say? I mean, I don't vote, but yeah. I wouldn't say Tank's a Hall of Famer.
No.
I would say he had an incredibly one-sided, profitable career. He made all the right decisions and matchmaking. He made a killing in pay-per-view, and he was a monster puncher. But he ain't gonna be remembered, and he's not gonna be a Hall of Famer.
He'll be remembered, but not for the accomplishments in the ring. He look, ultimately, as we've talked about, not the same thing, but with Jake Paul,
he'll be remembered for knocking out Ryan Garcia, another guy who's never won a world championship.
It's ultimately prize fighting, right? And
to this day, I still don't call Tank a champion, right? I refuse to do that.
He got bumped up because.
Okay, just throwing it out there.
Was it
him and Ryan Garcia will be the most successful guys in history that have probably never won a legitimate world title. As far as
jury's
money,
still out
as far as popularity, as far as what they did with their career.
Ryan's still pretty young. Like, Ryan's got a long way to go. He's got to overcome. We'll get to him in a minute. He's got to overcome some issues there. But I think I give Ryan a little bit of runway to accomplish that. The Tank stuff bothers me too. Like, when we did the show a few months ago and there was talk of Tank fighting Lamont Roach in December, I was okay with it because I knew the circumstances. Tank had been negotiating a fight against Vasily Lomachenko. Those talks fell apart because Lomachenko decided he didn't want to fight for the rest of the year in 2024. Fine. Like, that's Lomachenko's choice. Had a long career. Didn't want to take on Tank. So if Tank wanted to stay busy and fight before the end of the year, the options were fairly limited, right? They tried to talk to Rayo Valenzuela, but that didn't go very far. Valenzuela, of course, fought back in August. Nothing really came of Shakur Stevenson discussions at this time. So the pool shrank pretty significantly. So Roach was there. He had a legit title at 130. If you're going to do a stay busy fight in December, that's fine. But when the moment that fight fell apart, all the other options opened up. Like, why was there not a substantive conversation with Rayo Valenzuela to fight for his title at 140, which is a legitimate title? That's the title that Pitbull Cruz won. Valenzuela legitimately beat Pitbull, no matter what Pitbull says. That would have been a solid fight at 140 pounds. Tank has fought there before. He beat Mario Barrios at 140. Valenzuela was just one fight into his fight at 140, so he would have been fine size-wise. That would have been a good fight. How about your mandatory? William Zepeda, #1, just fought this past weekend. Why not do a deal to fight him? I know we're talking about Zepeda against Shakur Stevenson, but I promise you, if there was an opportunity for Zepeda to fight Tank Davis, Oscar De La Hoya, and the people at Golden Boy would have pivoted in a New York minute
100%.
to make that fight happen.
100%.
There are other options out there too. Raymond Morataya, undefeated prospect in the top-ranked stable. Teofimo Lopez out there. You know, he's got a belt at 140 pounds. No love lost between Teofimo and Tank. That would have been a super fight. Two things are certain about this Tank versus Roach fight. One, it'll sell at the Barclays Center because Tank sells tickets. Remember his last fight at Barclays did like a $5 million gate. He's going to sell tickets. 2, Tank wins.
And 3, Roach is a Maryland fighter, right?
Yes.
There you go. So he's around that area.
Well, no, not quite. If they were going to do it around that area, they would have done it at the Wizards Arena in D.C.
It's only like a 45-minute subway ride, or not subway, or train ride, isn't it?
It's 3.5 hours.
It looks closer on the map.
You just press the button and say D.C. and New York. How close are they?
It looks really close on the map when I'm watching it.
Roach is from D.C. Tank is from Baltimore. That would have made the I don't know what they call it, a Capital One Arena, the right spot for it there. But they're doing blocker regardless. It'll still sell tickets. But the bottom line is Roach can't win. He doesn't have the power to hurt Tank. He might box well for a few rounds, but ultimately
it'll look similar like Tank's last fight.
Against Frank Martin. It might look similar to what he did against Hector Luis Garcia. Hector Luis Garcia had the same title that Lamont Roach has. And he moved up in weight, boxed pretty decently for a few rounds, and then got knocked out. That's exactly what's going to happen. And that's the problem with this. We have to stop putting Tank Davis in fights that he has no chance of losing. There is no risk to any of these fights. And I was fine with it in December. I'm not fine with it now. There's so much that PBC and Tank Davis's team could have done. So many much better fights they could have made.
Tell him, Chris
but
Mannix.
They elected not to do so.
Tell him. No, it's about time you get frustrated and fed up. I've been fed up for a long time myself. But you got to start. I mean, look, we have the microphone in front of us. We can blow our horn and say, man, you got to stop with this shit already. It's nonsense. Nobody wants to watch Tank fight these guys anymore with so much talent in the lightweight division. You need to pick a name before one of these guys picks you off, before you have one a bad night, and then we're never going to see you against the big names. Can you imagine a mega fight, just like he did against Ryan Garcia, but on the championship level? It could be a Shakur, it can be a Lomachenko, it can be a Murataya, or even a Zepeda. Zepeda looked vulnerable against a southpaw and Tevin Farmer, a guy that can't punch. He looked vulnerable. So if there's a time where you can actually pick off a #1 contender, a guy with power that throws 1,000 punches a fight, where everybody would be like, whoa, Tank's fighting Camarón, I want to watch. Pay-per-view will be successful. And the fact that a Mexican's fighting a black American fighter, I tell you, it always works when it's crossed like that.
I think in a fight like that,
it sells, man. But it's not going to happen.
In a fight like that, I think Zepeda gets violently knocked out.
Hey, listen, I don't care. And as a
knocked
Mexican, I would gladly watch him get, was the word used? Violated? Violently
Not
violated.
No.
Give me another one for I could alliterate. Violently violated vigorously in the East Coast.
Awful.
But sign me up, man. Sign me up.
Violently violated vigorously.
Hey, you got to have a trifecta there.
Sounds like something you read in a police report.
It's a trifecta of alliteration there. But look, listen to me. I'm on board right there because it'll be a short, violent night. And who's not on board for that? It would be like a lightweight version of Hagler Hearns. Dude, it won't go 3 rounds.
When you saw the
Name it La Guerra. Guerra, there you go.
When you saw how Tevin Farmer countered Zepeda with that left hand, just imagine those left hands coming from Tank.
By the way, while we're here, why are you bringing it up? Give me my credit while we're on here.
You did. You said that Tevin
You said it wasn't going to go 3
distance.
rounds. I think we're sitting here, by the way.
I don't think I said 3 rounds. I thought it wasn't going to go.
You said it wasn't a chance. I said, man,
yeah, I didn't.
You're crazy.
Not only, I mean, look, the fact that it went the distance wasn't totally shocking to me. Like,
Yes,
you
it
called
is.
it. It wasn't shocking. The fact that it was that competitive was shocking. Like, I could have seen Tevin Farmer. I could have seen a scenario where Tevin went the distance by holding a lot. He did that early on in that fight.
He boxed, he fought,
he
and
came
did
on
well.
and fought and started to fight in the middle to the later stages of the fight and made it competitive. That's the part that really surprised me.
All I want is my credit on there.
Get credit for it. You get credit all the time for it. Quickly, you mentioned a couple of times Ryan Garcia. Are you okay with the Ryan Garcia exhibition in Japan?
Of course I'm not, but I can't hate against Ryan Garcia because he's one of these social media influencers you can't hold down whenever you have that mass following. So
why are you not okay with it then?
I'm not okay with it because he violated a rule, whether he cheated or not. He failed. Why is it Conor Benn, can't fight in the UK, but he came across the pond and he's fighting over here? Okay, it's a bad look for everyone in Britain saying, man, he should take his punishment. But in the States, we're like, hey, he found a loophole. Good for him. Ryan Garcia found a loophole, but why is it that he can fight and Devin Haney's still waiting in the wings when he's the one that got cheated
Devin
against?
Haney made a choice. Devin Haney had a chance to fight Sandor Martin. He passed on it. He's had some chances.
I didn't know that.
He's had some chances over the last few months to take lesser fights, but Devin wants to get paid.
I didn't know
and
that.
The fights he's been offered have not been. Yeah, this is more about Devin choosing not to fight than it is him not getting to get a fight.
Well, then good for the kid. He found the loophole. But honestly,
it's an exhibition. It's against a Japanese kickboxer.
Yeah,
it's not going to go well for the kickboxer. That's for sure.
Good for him. Staying busy, make a boatload of money, stay in the limelight. Your name recognition and value is still there. And you can't keep the kid down. Actually, you can't keep anyone down with a fucking social media following nowadays. It's that Jake Paul effect. It's kind of it's a new era we're in where it's not only in boxing, it's in sports or in any kind of marketing where if you have that following, they're gonna forgive you for your hiccups and the things that you do because, hey, listen, he has eyeballs. That's the world we live in now. I don't like it, but that's the world we live in.
Here's the only thing that would concern me, and I certainly hope that Ryan Garcia's team has paid attention to this. Like, the New York Commission has jurisdiction over all this. Does the New York Commission, or will the New York Commission, feel like it is being circumvented? Feel like that the spirit of the suspension is not being upheld, and might they tack something on? Now, I don't think so, but I would hope that Garcia's team at least kick the tires on that.
Don't be using words like circumventing around me, okay?
Went around that, okay?
Circumvented.
It's not
the
that
New
big
York
a word.
Commission can circumvent and circumcise the opportunity of Ryan Garcia to go to Japan. Whatever, man. Just say avoid, all right? So, yes, the New York Athletic State Commission, which is the most rigid and stringent, since you're throwing vocabulary words around me, they're the harshest when it comes to like that, right? To upkeeping their
they're up there. Nevada is pretty good too.
Okay, but they're up there. They're strict because I fought in New York and I knew how strict they was. They are with their testing. I got injured. They didn't want to pay for my stuff, but that's that's another story. So yes, considering that they're so strict, they can cause some hell. They can say something and they can actually uphold their values. They can do that. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't mind them trying. The fact that, they have so much leverage and power as one of the best commissions in the country against a kid with a lot of power and social media following. Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that battle off in the courtroom because let's keep it real, man. Ryan Garcia failed the drug test. He needs to be held in contempt. He needs to be held accountable, whatever. Yeah. He needs to be punished and he needs to serve that sentence. And if he can just go to another country and make a boatload of money and stay busy, it's not a good look.
Well, I'm sure he would argue that he is being punished. He's not allowed to fight in a sanctioned fight. His career is being put on pause. And really, this event against this kickboxer is a glorified appearance, right? Like, I mean, this is not a real fight. It may look like one when they both step into the ring, but it's not a real fight. Like, this is kind of the equivalent of Floyd Mayweather when he fought that Japanese kickboxer. Like, that's kind of what it is. So I don't think it's going to have an impact on Ryan Garcia's
suspension. Is it going to go on his
suspension.
boxing record?
No, it's an exhibition.
Oh, well, then it's totally fine then. I thought it was a real boxing fight.
No.
Well, what are you talking about? Jake Paul went on Mike Tyson's record. That was somewhat of an exhibition.
That was a sanctioned event, though, in
the
state
of Texas.
Do you really
think Jake Paul should be in the
I'm not
Mike
going
Tyson's
back down the Jake
resume?
Paul rabbit hole. No, I don't. I don't think
Ryan Garcia should be fighting if it's not going to go on his resume.
We just went round and round on this. I don't even know where we're ending up here. So let's just move on.
I tend to do that.
You do. All right. The fight we're both really excited about happening in the first quarter of next year is the officially announced fight between David Benavidez and David Morell. These were two guys that were top contenders at 168 pounds. Benavidez, a two-time world champion at 168. Morell, a interim champion at 168. They both have one fight at 175. Morell beat Hot Rod, going to butcher his last name, so not going to try, on the August 3rd card. David Benavidez, he beat Alexander Vostok, a former champion, on a card earlier in the year. They're now going to meet, I think it's going to be in Las Vegas, 175 pounds, two interim titles going to be on the line for that fight, which really doesn't matter all that much. This is really about two top-tier guys at 175 meeting in the ring. I'm assuming you're a big fan of this fight.
Who isn't, man? I think anyone with any kind of boxing brain is just salivating at this matchup. That's a perfect matchup. You can't ask for anything more. I mean, that's a perfect matchup between two big super middleweight, light heavyweights that are evenly matched. They were both the same height. And here's the thing, man, when you look into the numbers, because I remember the numbers of Morell studying his last fight against Hot Rod, he has a 78-inch reach. I mean, Benavidez has a long reach, almost 75 inches. This guy has 78. That's like heavyweight type long reach. Add the power that Morell has and Benavidez has. They're the same height. They're both pretty equal when it comes to speed as well. They're so evenly matched that I'm surprised that they took this fight. I'm really surprised. Benavidez chasing the Canelo payday is risking that against a guy with only 11 fights.
I mean, the Canelo payday is never coming for Benavidez.
Don't say never, man.
It's never coming for Benavidez.
All right, well, maybe another payday, but not against Morell.
Well, the payday is the better Bivol winner. But
there you go.
You know, in this fight, it's a calculated risk. I'll give you that. Morell's a good fighter. But if Benavidez, or Morell for that matter, can win that fight, they are the natural, obvious contender to fight the winner of Better Bivol.
That's a painful way to make yourself a mandatory, man. Now, mind you, I'm talking as a fan now, a boxing fan. Yes, I'm glad they agreed to fight, and credit to both of them. It takes a lot of balls to agree to fight each other because neither of them are champions. They're not champions, and they're fighting just for pride. They're fighting for their zero. They're fighting because they know it's a big fight. It's not a championship level, mega money, mainstream popular fight. It's two bad motherfuckers in their prime fighting each other, saying, "Hey, I can beat you." Well, shit, I can beat you. Well, let's find out. Man, it doesn't get better than that. And I think all boxing should applaud these two for stepping in the ring and deciding to fight each other at this point of their career where they're at their absolute prime. Both of them are at their absolute peak. And they're fighting in a new weight division that's going to favor both of them, not having to sacrifice to make 168. Man, just everybody in boxing, stay tuned, applaud them, and watch what it is when the best fight the best at the best time. It's fucking magic.
I just don't know where either one of them had to go if they didn't go in this direction. I mean, we saw Morell fighting deep on an undercard on the Riyadh season show in August. David Benavidez, good event. I think it was in June. Beat Vostok, good win for him. But what else is out there? Like, do you really need to see Benavidez against a Lyndon Arthur?
No.
Or do you need to see David Morell take on whatever other faded former 175-pounder that PBC could come up with? This was really the only real fight.
For Morell, you didn't let me answer. I would say yes, because with only less than a dozen fights, you're still making your name.
Yeah, but they're the same age, and it's not about the name.
People don't know David Morell is really.
How many fights? How is he going to get that name? How does he do that? He's been
by continuing to climb the ladder, becoming a champion in another weight division.
This is what you do.
He has 11 fights, man.
You just want to delay. Who cares? He has 11 fights, but he is a. Did you say the same thing about like Lomachenko? Like these guys that were decorated amateurs that are on a fast track, they take on big fights before other fighters would be ready.
And I don't mind that because they have the privilege to do that because they have that amateur pedigree. Yes, I agree. Fast track them. But at 11 fights, yes, Loma's just fucking special. MJ Akhmadaliev was fucking special.
Yeah, but what about his stablemate, Andy Cruz? Someone that's trying to get on that fast track as well. Like these guys are fighting 10, 12-round fights already. Once you're on that track, this is a natural fight. Look, they're both the same age. They're both former elite 168 pounders. This is an obvious fight. Now, I don't really know who wins. Neither one of them looked all that good at 175. Both went the distance. They were both knockout artists at 168. Both went the distance at 175.
And the reason is because they didn't have that size advantage at light heavyweight. At 168, there were monsters fighting, big natural 168 pounders that were 5'10", 5'11". These guys are 6'2" with 75+ inch reach, and they hydrate. They both have the power, the speed. They're the perfect specimen of a super middleweight fighter. Now at light heavyweight, they're average now. They don't have that size advantage. So that's the reason they both didn't look like monsters at light heavyweight at 175, because the 7 pounds is a major difference, and they're not fighting smaller fighters that are rehydrated to 168. But when they face each other and they're equally matched so evenly, I mean, it's going to be bombs away. And the fact that one of them has to lose, and is probably going to be by knockout, that guy's going to take 2 or 3 steps back by trying to do something great. And this is where I have a problem as a fighter, not as a fan, not as a pundit, as a fighter. Having the balls to face that challenge and then coming up short and losing, no shame there. But having to take those 2-3 steps back when you're already the unknown. Say David Morrell loses that fight, right? He was already unknown as a champion. He was already an unknown as a B-side to Benavidez. Now he loses to say he does lose to Benavidez. He takes 3 steps back. That's how you become lost in the wilderness of boxing, and it's hard to come back to the big money fight, to the big purses. It's hard for champions to look your way and say, "No, man, you lost on the big stage. Now let someone else deal with you. Let someone else deal with you. You're too much of a headache." He was a 6'3" hard punching southpaw with a Cuban background. No, thank you, man. No, thank you. It's the way it is, man. Sorry to tell you.
It's okay. If you lose a fight, yes, you take a step back. It's not 3 steps back. It's probably a half a step back. If this fight is as entertaining and competitive as we both seem to think it will be, the loser of this fight is not going to go very far. It's almost like saying
let me stop you there.
Hold on, I'm not done. I'm not done. It's my turn. Dmitry Bivol lose to Artur Beterbiev. Did Dmitry Bivol take a step back? He's not exactly the most marketable guy in the world. Did he take a step back losing that fight to Beterbiev?
We don't know yet. Who's he fighting next?
Probably Beterbiev in a rematch.
All I heard was probably. I'll give you a better example. Your number one favorite. Whatever happened to Demetrius Andrade losing to the guy we're talking about in Benavidez? This is a guy who was a southpaw, 6'1", 6'2", has all the skills that Morell has, but lacks the power. 1 fucking loss. Where is he now? Where's your boo-boo Andrade? Where's your number one guy that you used to put on a pedestal and say this guy belongs on the elite? 1 loss. We haven't heard from Boo-boo again.
We're going to talk about Boo-boo a little bit later in the show.
No, answer my question.
We're going to talk about, we got a mailbag question on that. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in the show. Last point on Benavidez against Morell.
Yeah, nothing
you
to say.
seem to think, I do have something to say on that. You seem to think that, do you think Benavidez is the favorite?
Yes.
You think he beats him?
Yes.
I kind of think so too. I think his volume.
And then 3 steps goes.
It's
David
not 3
Morrell.
steps backwards. When you lose a competitive fight, this is my biggest problem with your analysis, is that you are perfectly happy with a long run of absolutely dog shit fights from guys to protect their perfect record. That is what is causing this sport to slip from what was once in the mainstream to now among the fringes. You need to have guys in big fights and not worried about losses. Sergio, the fighters you grew up watching all have many, 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 many losses. The greatest fighter of all time, arguably Sugar Ray Robinson, 19 losses. Muhammad Ali, the GOAT, 5 losses. You go Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, Marvin Hagler. These guys had losses on their record. What does it matter if you lose a couple of fights, as long as you continue to get into the big ones?
I didn't say nothing about losing. When you're losing against the best,
you just said
fine.
If he loses, this fight takes 3 steps backwards.
It's David Morrell losing. That's the whole point. It's the fact that this unknown Cuban that has everything that you don't
become a lot more known fighting David Benavidez than he would fighting in the Armory in Minnesota.
For David Morrell, it's a bad way.
Oh,
now if
crazy.
it's like, look, David, it's going to go exactly like Andrade losing to Benavidez. You're not going to hear of him
Andrade
again.
is 30-something. Andrade's mid-30s. David Morrell is 26.
It's not Caleb Plant losing to Benavidez. Plant is back because
Actually, I think it's exactly that. I think you just made the greatest point of all. Caleb Plant, who only had that loss, his biggest fight was Canelo. He got
Caleb
beat.
Plant is not a tricky southpaw that boxes on the back foot. And no, Caleb Plant has balls. And he's exciting to watch, and he always faces the best, and he goes after the knockout. Now, Caleb Plant's a different story. When you're dealing with Boo Boo Andrade and Morell goes for the knockout, but if he comes up short, he depends how he loses. I think he'll change his style around. That's what I think.
Why would he change? The reason I don't want to go too far.
If he gets knocked out brutally, he'll have to start boxing.
Okay, maybe, but I don't think he gets knocked out brutally because Benavidez doesn't really knock guys brutally out. Like he wears you down. Like he's a volume puncher, a volume power puncher with a great chin. Morell is the one that has the one punch knockout power. At least he did at 168. Look, I think this is brilliant for Morell. I think if he loses a competitive fight, he barely takes a step back. He gets back in the ring in 3 or 4 months.
I agree with all that. I agree with that. Now let's talk about if he loses a bad knockout, then what?
If he loses by first round knockout, yes, that's a big problem.
Say he loses by a beating in a 6-round fight.
I mean, Caleb Plant went the distance with Benavidez, but he took a beating.
Answer my question. What happens then to David Morrell?
I don't know. I think he has to recover. He has to bounce back the way all fighters do.
How many fights for him to bounce back?
2 or 3.
2 or 3 against people that
soft
nobody
competition.
Knows. Yeah, man.
Either way, he was gonna fight soft competition. Regardless.
And now
do you want to see him in against Hot Rod in a rematch?
No.
Exactly. This is what we're talking about.
I just, whenever you get to a point where you're making championship money, you have that undefeated record, you escaped Cuba and did all the great things as an amateur, and you wanna cash in on all that pedigree.
That's what he's doing.
It's like an education, Mannix. You went to Boston College, right? What would your father think if you did all that studying just to be a fucking mailman or something like that? He would get pissed off, right?
This is the worst analogy I've ever heard.
All right, well, maybe not a mailman, but
you're talking about apples and goats. So you're not even talking about things in the same category.
Oh, man. Look, David Morrell did all the great things as an amateur, winning these world championships. He won a world title. He's undefeated. He did it in less than a dozen fights. He's not known. He's not a commodity. People don't know who he is.
You know how you become one? You beat David Benavidez.
But he's not.
You roll the dice.
But he's not.
You take a chance.
He's rolling the dice, but you and me agree that he's an underdog, and I think he'll be the underdog.
He's not a huge underdog.
And I think
he's not Edgar Berlanga against Canelo, I'll tell you that much.
I think it's a type of fight where both of them get hurt in a firefight.
He's not Vostok against Benavidez. Benavidez has faced some lot bigger underdogs.
Mark my words, man. He's going to go in the same way of Demetrius Andrade. And if we ever do see Andrade come back, he's probably going to be fighting Morell.
Andrade is, I believe, 34. Morell is 26. That is a big difference in age. All right. So we joke, Sergio, about your career a lot, but I will acknowledge you were an excellent boxer. You won the contender. You're from a world champion. Nobody could ever take that away from you. What you are also, though, is one of the worst businessmen as boxers that I have ever seen. One of the most famous stories that I like to tell is how you turned down a chance to fight against Jermaine Taylor for the undisputed middleweight championship. I think because there was a difference in like per diem, with you two.
We were $150,000 away from making that fight happen. And it did not happen. But I'll tell you one thing. I do regret it, not because of the money. I regret it because of the legacy. I mean, I had a chance to fight for undisputed in the 4-belt era against a troubled champion in Jermaine Taylor in a fight I could have won.
Yes.
But, hindsight's 20/20, whatever.
It is. So that was one of a string of bad business decisions you made in your professional career. So I want to introduce a new segment here on the show, which is the Sergio Mora Mount Rushmore of bad business decisions, which is effectively going to be.
But I made more than 4 bad business decisions.
No,
There's
this
only
isn't
4
about you.
faces up there.
This is guys that have made terrible business decisions that are happening in real time. And the first face I want to put on that Mount Rushmore is the face of Eimantas Stanionis, who we found out this week is going to defend his welterweight title against Shakram Giasov, who is the #1 challenger for Stanionis' WBA belt. The reason this is a bad business decision is because Stanionis, just a couple of months ago, turned down significantly more money to get into the ring for a title unification fight against Jaron Boots Ennis. So instead of fighting Boots in a big event for multiple titles, he is stuck fighting the unknown Shakram Giyasov in a world title defense for what is effectively pennies or nickels or quarters, whatever it is, on the dollar. So welcome, Eimantas Stanionis, to the Sergio Mora bad business decision Mount Rushmore.
Was that a question?
Do you agree?
I agree. Yeah, of course I have to agree. And by the way, there's a lot of great men that have made bad business managers, right? Mark Twain was a terrible.
Why is Mark Twain always the go-to for you?
Because he's a Sagittarius like me, and I'm a big Mark Twain fan. But anyway, he lost everything and had to recoup it in the 60s because of bad business decisions.
But
anyway,
how crazy?
Question,
is it not crazy?
Yes, it's crazy.
That Stanionis turns down 7 figures to fight Boots, and instead will fight Shakram Giyasov in a fight that he could lose. Like, Shakram Giyasov is a decent fighter. He could lose that fight for significantly less.
Look, I can go good and bad. I can go sunny side up. I can say that I can give you an example of my glass half full. What do you want? Glass half full, glass half empty?
Either.
Okay, glass half full. You got to give it to these Eastern European, Central Asian fighters. They don't give a fuck. They're willing to face anyone, anytime, and that's what you want out of boxers. Now, these guys aren't young boxers; they're in their 30s or early 30s, whatever it is. So they need to make business sense, but they still don't care. They're willing to fight anyone, anytime. I just want to fight the best. That's what's something the Western fighters and a lot of American fighters can learn from. These guys are willing to face anyone, anytime. So credit to that. That's the half glass full analogy. Half glass empty. You just said it, man. It is stupid. Wait to cash out. Wait to cash out against a Boots, and it's a Crawford. Look at what Madrimov did. Madrimov is like a Giyasov. They're from the same Uzbek school of boxing. He just cashed out on the biggest possible stage against Boots Ennis. All eyes are on him in a fight that he was competitive in. He got a boatload of money. He lost to the absolute best fighter, pound for pound on the planet. No shame losing there. That's what you do. So look, half glass, half full. I don't know what to tell you. You got to give credit to these guys for doing it. But as a boxer and as a manager, you got to say, like, man, just wait and cash out on your undefeated record. I don't get it.
Crazy. If he winds up losing to Giyasov, he will have fumbled the bag.
Stop saying fumble the bag.
I
told you not to say that again.
Way. I'm sorry, but that's what it is. There was
just
7-figure offer on the table to fight Boots Ennis in a title unification fight. Now you're fighting Shakram Giyasov on a PBC show. Maybe it winds up as the co-main of Benavidez against Morell. Maybe it winds up on the Tank Davis card. I don't know, but either way, it's not the financial reward that he would get to fight Boots, and it's not as high profile either.
He mishandled the monetary compensation. Don't say drop the bag again, please.
I'm not saying that either. All right, when we come back, we will take your questions via the mailbag. All right, Sergio, let's take some questions from the mailbag. And I want to start with the aforementioned Demetrius Andrade. Ryan on Instagram asked, do you see a path for Demetrius Andrade to get a big fight again?
No. And that's the thing when it comes to fighters like Demetrius Andrade, not just because he's a southpaw and he's not a big puncher and he didn't go for knockouts and he was a distance fighter, not because of all that. When you're a careful fighter first, and I was one of them, by the way, whenever you're a defensive fighter, once you lose that 0, then you become used goods and you're not as popular. It's that 0 that people care about whenever you're that type of fighter. Bernard Hopkins, for a great example, one of the greatest fighters in the last 20 years. If he would have lost on the way up, I mean, he lost early in his career, but if he would have lost on the way up to a William Joppy or someone like that, you wouldn't have heard of Bernard Hopkins fighting Felix Trinidad or anyone else, because it was that undefeated streak that he went through, but he was a careful fighter. A lot of careful fighters can't lose, man. They cannot lose. And they can't lose badly. So Andrade, the only thing he had going for him is the fact that he was a U.S. Olympian. He was a 2-division champion. I don't know who he beat in those 2 divisions, but he was a 2-division champion. And he had that shiny donut, that 0 that everyone wanted. Once that 0's out of the record, then Andrade takes not 1 step, not 2 steps. He takes 5 steps back because people didn't want to watch him anyway. That's just the way it is. Sad to say, I was one of those quote-unquote boring fighters. But once you lose, people are glad to see you leave. It's c'est la vie.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough for him to get a big fight. The mistake that Andrade made was vacating his middleweight title and not fighting Janibek. Now, at the time, Janibek looked like a real killer at 160. But with the benefit of hindsight, we've seen Janibek in some fights where he hasn't looked all that great, and it made me believe that Andrade could have beaten him, could have at least outboxed him in their fight. And not only Sergio the zero, but having the title was another piece of leverage that he had at 160. Giving that up now, he's kind of in between. I've heard members of his team say he's going to drop back to 160. I think that's probably the smart decision if he does that, because at 168, I know Benavidez is a huge 68-pounder, but he looks small, didn't have much power there. I don't know what the pathway is to a big fight at 68. And 60 is problematic as well. Like, who's a big name for him to fight there? It seems like Carlos Adames is going to fight Hamza Shiraz at some point next year. That's one belt that's gone. He could go back down and try to challenge Janibek now. I mean, I don't know if there's any money in that.
He could say at 168. I mean, I would love to see a fight between him and Caleb Plant.
Yeah, but who's paying for that? Like,
I'm just saying, stylistically, that's an interesting fight.
Stylistically, it's a bad fight.
No, it's not.
Plant Plant's a boxer. What did I just say
about Plant? He's a boxer with balls. He's a fighter that if he starts landing punches, he's going to go for the knockout. Andrade, at this point of his career, I think he has no choice but to start being more aggressive offensively, because he's been sidelined too much, and he knows what it takes. I was part of that as well. The later part of my career, not only because I started losing my legs, because I wasn't getting opportunities anymore. I had to be more offensive, and that's why I started getting knockouts towards the end of my career. I think Andrade's on the same boat.
If they want to make that fight with Jermall Charlo,
there you go.
I wouldn't complain.
There you go.
I don't know if that's a big fight anymore.
I don't care.
It's not a big fight
that one
anymore.
off. It's fine.
I wouldn't mind seeing that on the undercard of any of the two PBC shows that are already made. Our friend Bernie Barmacel, PR maven to the stars. He asked the question, who wins this upcoming fight in December between Sergey Bohachuck and Israel Madrimov?
Shout out Bernie, man. He knows how to match make too, aside from PR. And I mean, that's an excellent matchup between two great fighters. I mean, Bohachuck just came up short in arguably a fight he could have won against Virgil Ortiz. He's a beast. He is a beast, but Madrimov has more
skills.
I don't want to say skills. I think he has
skills.
I think he has more tools in his bag, and the fact that he lost.
You can say bag.
In his toolbox. Okay. And he came up short against the best fighter in the world. No shame there. So yeah, I would favor Madrimov because he has that footwork. He has a little bit more. So yeah, I would slightly favor that. But man, don't put it past Bohachuck to do something great.
I think Bohachuck is a really fun fighter. I do think Madrimov is a level above him, though.
Yeah, well, slightly. Maybe not even a level.
Well, look, you go back and watch
maybe half a level.
You go back and watch that Ortiz fight, and yes, Bohachuck had 2 knockdowns in that fight, but beyond that, Ortiz outboxed him for most of that fight.
And Ortiz is a flat-foot fighter.
And Madrimov isn't. I think Madrimov is going to stay out of the way, out of the line of fire from Bohachuck's best shots, and I can actually see that fight being like 9-3 Madrimov. It's not disrespectful to Bohachuck. I think Madrimov is elite at 54.
I don't think it'll be 9-3. I think it'll be
8-4 at best.
It'll be a competitive fight where you know who's clearly
Bohachuck's
ahead.
good. From what I've seen, when he's got opponents that will either stand in front of him or he can track down. Like Madrimov, if he's the fighter we saw against Terrence Crawford, in great shape, boxing on his toes, moving in and out, and with enough pop to really hurt you, right? Like the reason that Terrence Crawford fought so cautiously is he knew what was coming back. He knew Madrimov had some power there. So I just think it's a bad matchup for Bohachuck.
You know what? If the right promoter promotes that fight and they put it in a small ring, they don't get a 20 by 20 foot ring and they make it smaller, it could be an interesting fight. So they really got to concentrate on a small ring, depending where that fight is and at what weight. If would it be?
It's 54. They're 54? Both 54s. Yeah.
Yeah. I would love that fight, man.
It's going to happen. It's happening in December. Are you not aware of these
things? Just like
things?
Morell and Benavidez, man.
I
just found out about Morell Benavidez when you asked me about it. I'm like, whoa, that fight's happening? Yeah, sign me up. Both those fights.
I give you these questions a day in advance.
Yeah, and then I study them. So a day and a half ago, I was null and void. I didn't know.
By the way, speaking of ring size, I heard that one of the negotiating points for the Shakur Stevenson-Williams Zepeda fight is that Zepeda's team, Golden Boy, they want the 18 by 18 foot ring.
There you go.
I believe, at least I haven't heard this directly from Shakur's team, but they would prefer the 20 by 20, the usual size ring. So ring size definitely a variable in some of these fights.
Fucking A, it matters.
Last one. Marcos asks, is this the end for Jose Ramirez? We saw Ramirez really look average in his win, or his loss, I should say, to Arnold Barboza this past weekend. Credit Barboza, who had a good game plan, was in shape, outboxed Ramirez, but that was a fight that when you combine it with the way Ramirez looked against Rances Barthelemy, you do start to wonder, like, what does Jose Ramirez have left? So I did ask a couple of people in Ramirez's team about his future, and the message I got back was, hey, we're going to wait, let Ramirez rest, get into April, May of next year, and see what our options are. They are keeping it on the table that Ramirez could move up to 147 pounds, basically a career-long 140-pounder. So a move might do him some good. But again, he's another guy, 32 years old, where I think the climb back up the ranks is going to be really hard for him.
Marcos was his name?
Marcos asked the question.
I think we're probably going to see the end of Ramirez on the main event stage. And the fact that he is a former Olympian, a former champion, he got good money, and he's not the type of guy that's going to want to take a few steps back in paycheck to get back on top, because he's been a marquee
seven-figure guy for
He's been a marquee fighter for a long time. So I think that, and the fact that he has come back from inactivity in the last 4 years, only fighting once a year. The last thing he needs is another break. The last thing he needs is more inactivity, like his team wants him to after this fight, which wasn't a physical fight. So I think either he hops right back up there with another name and tries to win, or yes, it's the end of Ramirez as we know it on the main event stage.
I mean, we called the Ramirez fight against Maurice Hooker, which may have been the best performance of Ramirez to date. Yep. The guy we saw in the ring this past weekend was a shadow of that guy. Like,
even against Barthelemy, he didn't look good.
Didn't look good. No, took, I don't know if they called it a knockdown, but it was a knockdown that he took in that fight against Barthelemy, and then, had trouble. Again, the Richard Comey fight was fine, and Comey was kind of washed at that point. He still needed 11 rounds to get him out of there. What I saw from Ramirez in that fight against Barboza was a guy that was reluctant to pull the trigger, right? Mm-hmm. He wasn't reluctant against Maurice Hooker. When he landed a good shot, that shot that wobbled Hooker in that fight that eventually led to the knockout, like, he followed up with like 50 punches, just threw a bunch of them. Against Barboza, who is not a big puncher, every time he tried to close the gap, he wasn't throwing. And that's not the Jose Ramirez I'm used to seeing. So something was going on with him during this fight. Maybe it's age, maybe it's weight. We both agree didn't look that great during the fight week, cutting back down to 140. Maybe a move up to 147 will revive him. And he does still have a name that somebody will give him a decent fight. But winning those fights at this age, I don't know, man. It's another one I don't really see it.
I don't see it either. I think we've seen the end of him. I just answered the question.
And we have seen the end of this episode of the show.
The Mexican Mark Twain, I'm out.